Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Gambling Did You Know session. Today, we're going to be talking about answering this question. Are there different types of gamblers? And really, there there are many different types of gamblers. It depends how many types there are, depending on who you're talking to. But we can definitely say that many people who gamble fall into certain groups. And really, this is true for pretty much anything you're talking about as well. So, all of us are different. We all have different, experiences and things going on in our lives, but oftentimes we can kind of fit into similar groups based on some form of behavior or thought process or something like that. So that's how we're going to kind of break it down today, talking about different types of gamblers and explain some of their thoughts, some of their feelings, and those behaviors as well. So let's go ahead and look at our first one today. So we have the casual or social or recreational gambler. So there's many different names you could call this group of people. And realistically, the majority of people who do gamble fall into this group. So, if you know someone who gambles, if you gamble yourself, chances are, you do probably fall into this group, but I do want you to be aware of the other groups that we'll talk about today, and maybe see if, you or again, someone you care about, maybe falls into some of those groups because they can be a little bit more potentially dangerous for that person. So with the casual, social, or recreational gambler, ego is not tied to winning. You're not really worried about winning. You're just, gambling for fun. It's entertainment or, an exciting experience for you. So with this group, again, you're going to be less likely to see gambling disorder developing, or it's not likely that this person is going to be seeing negative effects of gambling on their life. They're still going to have strong relationships. They're going to have other hobbies and things like that where gambling is not their whole world. It is just a small piece of their leisure activity. So that's the casual social gambler. There is also a serious social gambler. So this person definitely takes gambling more seriously. They're going to be putting more energy into gambling, probably putting their ego into it as well. So kind of taking pride in being what they would consider a good gambler. They may look down on other people who don't really worry about winning and things like that. With this group, with the serious social gambler, you may start to see some sort of breakdown, some sort of problems with relationships and hobbies. It depends a little bit how far along they are into this group or in this journey, I guess you could say. In the social serious or serious social gambler group, gambling still is a little bit on the back burner. It is still second to family and job and things like that. But again, you can start to see cracks or problems forming in that process. So a person may also be in this group for many years before progressing further into what we would call problem gambling. But this is definitely a group that we do want to kind of keep an eye on. So if you do know someone who really takes gambling seriously, you don't think they have a problem, but they are serious about it. They're putting energy and time into it, as well as money. You may want to start thinking about reaching out to them, seeing if they need help or something like that potentially. So then we get to the professional gambler. And first off, I want to stress this is extremely rare. You can kind of think of it as, a sport in a way. Compare it to, professional football or basketball or anything like that. If you take the number of people who gamble and compare it to the number of people who play those sports, recreationally, you're going to see there's a very, very few amount of people who actually can go and make a career out of this. So that's the same for any kind of sport like that. It's the same for gambling. There are some people who can be successful with gambling. They can kind of view it in this way that it's a business. They're disciplined and controlled about it, how they're gambling, but it is very, very, very rare for that person to actually exist and have, I guess, that dedication to it. So the professional gambler is, going to be very meticulous about it. They're going to have a certain amount of money that they're willing to bet. They're never going to kind of go over that amount. They're going to be studying whatever games they're playing, finding the best advantage for themselves, and then they're going to kind of stick with that advantage. They're not going to try new things. It's not supposed to be fun for them. They are viewing it as a business. So this group is likely to participate in what we would call the skill-based side of gambling. So it is things that more like poker as opposed to slot machines, right? So, you have a little bit more control, a little bit more skill goes into that. So it is likely that, if you are very dedicated, that would be a person's best chance when we're talking about something like poker for, being successful with gambling, as opposed to something that is completely down to chance, like a slot machine. I will say though, also, this group is not exempt from problem gambling. So over time, if they're not paying attention, or they get a little bit, complacent with it, the professional gambler can increase their tolerance. They can still, start to make bad decisions in the sense of, placing a bet that isn't in their advantage. They can still potentially lead to problem gambling. So no class here is, again, exempt from potentially developing problem gambling. So they would still have to be very, very cautious and careful with their gambling habits. So then we get to the relief and escape gambler. This is a common one where a person is, struggling with something. They may be suffering with depression, anxiety. They may just be bored, or they may have some sort of conflict. And basically this pushes that person to gamble. So they're trying to get relief from these kind of what we would call, I guess, negative emotional states. They're going to resort to gambling to basically avoid dealing with this crisis or this problem that they can't really handle emotionally. They can't process or work through themselves. So they're going to kind of just try to escape. They're going to try to get that relief, as the name states, through gambling. So again, they're gambling to block pain, not to necessarily feel happy. I will say this group is very likely to be unsuccessful, with gambling, in the sense that they're not going to be winning money likely, because they're going to be gambling in that emotional state. They're probably going to have poor decision-making, poor judgment, just because they're dealing with something else. They're not really focused on their gambling. So in that sense, it is likely that they're going to be losing money while they're doing this. And this group especially can be, helped. They can see benefits, especially from developing and practicing other, more positive coping skills. So replacing gambling with something that would be a little bit more beneficial to themselves, that's going to do wonders for this group here. So then we get to the personality gambler, and I'll say those groups that we've talked about so far today, they're all, legal, at least assuming that the person is of age to gamble. They're all potentially able to lead to things like problem gambling. So again, any of those groups that we've talked about can lead to problem gambling. But this one is kind of a problem in a different sense. So the personality gambler is probably unethical. They may, cheat or increase their odds in some illegal way. You can see in this picture here, they can have either marked cards or actually, physically putting a card up their sleeve, using loaded dice, fixing a horse race, all sorts of things like that. So this is where the personality gambler thrives. They really try to, make their money with gambling however they possibly can. And this is, again, different from the professional gambler. The professional gambler is not crossing that line. They're not doing something illegal. They're just trying to kind of beat those odds themselves. So the personality gambler may actually steal money to gamble. Again, they'll kind of take any opportunity they have or any advantage they have over an honest gambler. In other parts of their life, it's likely that they're going to be showing poor work ethic. They probably, or statistically, have probably had many jobs or kind of bounce around from job to job. They may have experienced, other criminal behavior or, shown other criminal behavior in the past as well. And again, gambling is definitely an issue with this group, but there's likely other problems or struggles that they're dealing with. So, just getting treatment for their gambling is probably not going to be enough for this group. So then we have a couple other types that are, I'm going to say, kind of just a smaller group, but you may still, see yourself or see someone you care about in some of these different types too. So there is, naive type or magical thinking, as we would call it. This person really doesn't have a realistic understanding of the odds of the games that they're playing. They're probably going to believe that, they understand it. They can predict the machines or whatever games they're playing, while that's actually not true. So chances are this group is going to be unsuccessful, again, with their gambling behaviors. Excuse me. Then we have the early success type. So you probably know this type of person. Maybe they don't gamble, but they are good at whatever they do. They try something once and they find that they're successful with it, whether that's a sport or, some sort of game or, music, anything like that, right? They try something once, they kind of master it, or they're really good at it. So a lot of times when these people get into gambling, they may have that same attitude. They may expect that, okay, I'm going to do well in this because I do well in, other parts of my life. But if they start to lose, that's where we can start to see the problem here. So their attitude is probably going to be try harder, kind of believing, I know I can do this. And then, once I am successful here, I can stop at any time. Chances are, though, if, they are really their early success type, they're going to struggle with that, right? So they're going to put more effort in, and it's not necessarily true that the more effort you put into gambling, the more money you're going to make, right? So that's something to keep in mind with this group. And then we have the very poor and very rich. This kind of depends for sure on a lot of different things, but if a person comes from a deprived background, they had struggles, maybe their parents were less fortunate than others, a lot of times they'll start to gamble to try to stop that cycle. Right. So try to kind of get around that. They're going to potentially be taking big chances on gambling, but they're also going to generally kind of feel low self-esteem or embarrassment with poverty. So that can actually set them up for problems as well. If you're taking those big chances, unfortunately, you're probably not going to be very successful. On the flip side, you can kind of see the same type of thing actually with people who were, more fortunate or rich in a sense. So they may not have as much drive as other groups. They didn't have to work for things as much as others. So they may kind of take that same process or thought process to gambling. They may think that it is, easy money. It's a good way to make money. It's very easy to do. And again, they may be placing big risks on it, which might not work out for them as well. So some of these groups you can definitely see probably in people that you care about as well. Excuse me. And then we do have finally the problem gambler or the compulsive gambler. So this is basically when gambling has become a problem for the person. They're going to be gambling despite seeing negative outcomes across their life. So they're probably not going to really tolerate losing, or they're not going to deal well with losing. They're probably going to be chasing losses that occur in a short amount of time, at the same time forgetting those bigger losses, or those losses that have occurred over a long period of time. So that's definitely a problem where a person, forgets how much they've lost. They really focus on, now or yesterday, I lost this much or I gained this much. So what can I do today? While over time, they're probably going to be losing more and more money. So they're going to be betting impulsively and taking big risks. They're going to be really preoccupied with gambling. You might see some urges or cravings to gamble. They may be actually structuring their life or structuring their free time around gambling. This is going to be definitely a big part of their life. And they may attempt to quit, but oftentimes they do relapse because of that lack of control. They don't, have that control. They feel a compulsive need to gamble. That's the whole process here. And that's, again, obviously a dangerous place to be. So I think this little graphic at the bottom here, I think is important to mention as well. When we talk about gambling, if we're talking about no risk at all, that equates to no gambling. Recreational gambling, you're spending a little bit of time and money on it, but that is generally low risk. It's not a big deal for the most part, but the more time and money and energy you spend gambling, the more high risk it is, and the more likely it is that you're going to be developing problem gambling or gambling disorder. So that is our last group today. If you are seeing that in yourself, or again, maybe someone that you care about, you can always reach out to any of these resources on the screen now, and they will be able to help you. So I'm going to leave this up for a couple seconds more, but thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time with another Gambling Did You Know session.